Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. Today is Monday, November 4th, 2019. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's NFL games and look ahead to tonight's Monday night game between the Cowboys and the Giants, college football from the weekend, NBA and NHL from the weekend, college football firing, a early free agent signing, as well as an extension slash opt-in per se in baseball, and college football gets the lines week 11, and my best bet of the day. Okay, we're going to start with the NFL games from yesterday. There were a couple very surprising results and other not so surprising results. First up, a game from London. The Texans defeat the Jaguars by a score of 26-3, an impressive win in division in London for Houston. They are 6-3, Jacksonville 4-5. Deshaun Watson, 22 of 28, 201 yards and 2 touchdowns. Gardner Minshew, 27 of 47, 309 garbage yards and 2 picks. Well, not all of it garbage time, but some of those were garbage time in my opinion. 1 o'clock slate, Bills over the Redskins, 24-9. Buffalo, good bounce back. They're 6-2. Washington, 1-8. Josh Allen, 14 of 20, 160 yards and a touchdown. Dwayne Haskins, 15 of 22, 144 yards. Chiefs over the Vikings, 23-26 on a game-winning field goal by Harrison Butker. I think I called that, by the way, on the podcast. I think that's how I predicted how that game was going to end, and props to me for that. KC 6-3, and so is Minnesota. Matt Moore, 25 of 35, 275 yards and a touchdown. Kirk Cousins, 19 of 38, 220 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Dolphins defeat the Jets 26-18 for their first win of 2019. They're 1-7, and so are the Jets. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 24 of 36, 288 yards and 3 touchdowns. Sam Darnold, 27 of 39, 260 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. He was terrible in that game, as was the entire team. Eagles over the Bears, 22-14. Eagles get the big, important win at home to get back over 500 at 5-4. Bears fall under 500 even more. They drop to 3-5. Carson Wentz, 26 of 39, 239 yards and a touchdown. Mitch Trubisky, awful yet again. 10 of 21 and 125 yards. Yikes, he's the worst quarterback in the league, and I think there's a chance he's benched for Chase Daniel this week. There's a lot of talk about that. We'll see if that's the case. Steelers over the Colts, 26-24. The Steelers back to 500 at 4-4. Took advantage of some Colts injuries. Indy 5-3. Mason Rudolph, 26 of 35, 191 yards, a touchdown and the pick. Brian Hoyer comes in for relief for Jacoby Brissett, who hurt his knee. 17 of 26, 168 yards, 3 touchdowns, and a pick. But Adam Vinatieri single-handedly costs the Colts yet another game. If it wasn't for him, honestly, they'd be 7-1. And we're talking about them being in play for the 1 seed in the AFC. If not for him, in my humble opinion, that's just facts at this point. The guy's washed up. It's like they're treating him like he's Eli Manning or something. Like, they're treating him like he's this. I know he's the best kicker of all time, but he's got to move on. And it's just frustrating if you're a Colts fan that this guy that's been a legend is really showing his age this year. You have to move on if you're the Colts. I'm sorry. That guy is single-handedly the reason why this team is not 7-1, despite the retirement of Andrew Luck and the injury to Jacoby Brissett this week, and T.Y. Hilton's injury as well is not very good either. Panthers over the Titans, 30-20. The Panthers get a big bounce-back win to go to 5-3. Tennessee drops to 4-5. Kyle Allen, 17 of 32, 232 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Ryan Tannehill, 27 of 39, 331 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. Raiders over the Lions, 31-24. Raiders stop the Lions on 4th and goal. Less than 5 seconds to go in the game. Raiders go to 4-4. Detroit 3-4-1. Derek Carr, 20 of 31, 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. Matthew Stafford, 26 of 41, 406 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. So a big win for John Gruden there. Seahawks over the Buccaneers, 40 to 34 in overtime. Seahawks go to 7-2. Tampa Bay 2-6. Russell Wilson, probably your MVP favorite right now, 29 of 43, 378 yards and 5 touchdowns. Jameis Winston, 29 of 44, 335 yards and 2 touchdowns. And by the way, we're now in the 4 o'clock slate. Broncos over the Browns, 24-19 without Joe Flacco. Broncos go to 3-6. Browns drop to a disastrous 2-6. Brandon Allen coming in for the injured Joe Flacco, 12 of 20, 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. Baker Mayfield, 27 of 42, 273 yards and a touchdown. Chargers over the Packers, 26-11. This was the sucker pick of the week, as May and a lot of other people within the media and fans just in general took the Packers, and the degenerates out there as well, thinking that was the lock of the week. Now I'm out of my survivor pool, and the Packers really cost a lot of folks some money, and that was a big win for Vegas as the Chargers pull off the outright upset. They're 4-5 on the year, so they're kind of back in the mix. And Green Bay drops to 7-2. Phillip Rivers, 21 of 28, 294 yards. Aaron Rodgers, 25 of 35, 161 yards and a touchdown. So a bad game for Aaron Rodgers. And the most significant result of Week 9, Ravens over the Patriots, 37-20. A fantastic win for the Ravens. They are 6-2. New England is 8-1. That was their first loss of the year. Lamar Jackson, 17 of 23, 163 yards and a touchdown. Tom Brady, 30 of 46, 285 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. So a little bit of a breakthrough game for Lamar in terms of beating a good team. Meanwhile, his rushing numbers, he rushed for 61 yards on 16 carries. And tonight you have the Cowboys at the Giants, 8:15, ESPN. Joe Tessitore, Booger McFarland, and Lisa Salters on the call. Cowboys are giving 6.5 in this game against the Giants team who has shown offensive signs of life last week against the Lions. Granted, it was in defeat. The over-under in this game is 48. I'm going to take the Giants getting to 6.5. I think they have a chance to win this game outright. I think the loss of Leighton Vander Esch will hurt the Cowboys' defense. I think that Jason Garrett on the road in a night game scares me. Granted, the Giants are a bad team, but I just saw the same Cowboys team lose in a day game to the even worse team in MetLife Stadium, that is the Jets. So, anything can happen. I'm going to say the Cowboys win 27-24, game-winning field goal by Brett Maher. I don't know if it'll be at the buzzer, but I could see it being with like a minute left, and then Giants go for the drive. Bad call on them, and they lose. I could see a world like the referee is making a bad call to kind of rig it for Dallas. Seen that before. Or see it rigged for another team against the Giants. That's just how things have gone for the Giants this year pretty much. So, give me the Cowboys in a close one. We're going to be talking about this as a game that the Cowboys barely survive and hang on as they host the Vikings next Sunday night. So that should be very interesting. Alrighty. Next up, college football from the weekend. Some very interesting results, some upsets, some surprises, some blowouts, some good ones. So without further ado, here we go. Friday night, Navy over UConn 56-10. Navy is 7-1, UConn 2-7. So those who had the over for Navy wins cashed in. Number 14, Michigan over Maryland 38-7. Michigan 7-2, Maryland 3-6. I thought that game would be much more competitive. Number 23, Wake Forest over NC State 44-10. I thought this game would be even more competitive than it was as well. Wake 7-1, NC State 4-4. UCF over Houston 44-29. UCF 7-2, Houston 3-6. Buffalo over Eastern Michigan 43-14. Buffalo 5-4, Eastern Michigan 3-5. Central Michigan over Northern Illinois 48-10. CMU 6-4, they're ball eligible now. NIU 3-6. Purdue over Nebraska 31-27. Purdue 3-6. Nebraska 4-5. BC over Syracuse 58-27. BC 5-4. Syracuse 3-6. Texas A&M over UTSA 45-14. A&M 6-3. UTSA 3-5. Florida International over Old Dominion 24-17. FIU 5-4. They're a win away from a bowl. Old Dominion 1-8. Liberty over UMass 63-21. Liberty 6-3. UMass 1-8. Bowling Green over Akron 35-6. Bowling Green 3-6. Akron 0-9. Number 16 Notre Dame over Virginia Tech 21-20. This was a close call. The Irish survived. They're 6-2. Virginia Tech is 5-3. Coastal Carolina over Troy 36-35. Coastal's 4-4. Troy is 3-5. Number 8 Georgia over number 6 Florida 24-17. A good win for Georgia. Their season's still alive in terms of hopes of a college football playoff spot. They're 7-1. Florida is 7-2. Number 22 Kansas State over Kansas 38-10. Predictable for the Jayhawks to have a letdown. K-State is 6-2. They're ball eligible now, and KU is 3-6. Arkansas State over UL Monroe 48-41. Ark State 5-4. UL Monroe 3-5. Marshall over Rice 20-7. Marshall 6-3. They are now ball eligible. Rice is 0-9. North Texas over UTEP 52-26. North Texas 4-5. UTEP 1-7. Air Force over Army 17-13. This game was a lot closer than I thought it would be. I guess it's because of the two service schools. Air Force 7-2. Army, an underachieving, underwhelming 3-6. Charlotte over Middle Tennessee 34-20. Charlotte 4-5. Middle Tennessee 3-6. Colorado State over UNLV 37-17. CSU 4-5. UNLV 2-7. Miami over Florida State 27-10. This was an impressive win for Miami, who's 5-4. FSU is 4-5. Oklahoma State over TCU 34-27. Oklahoma State 6-3. TCU 4-4. Illinois over Rutgers 38-10. Illinois 5-4. Rutgers 2-7. So Illinois is a win away from a bowl. Number 4 Clemson over Wofford 59-14. Clemson 9-0. Wofford 5-3. Number 9 Utah over Washington 33-28. Utah 8-1. Washington 5-4. Mississippi State over Arkansas 54-24. Mississippi State 4-5. Arkansas 2-7. Pitt over Georgia Tech 20-10. Pitt 6-3. Georgia Tech 2-6. FIU over Western Kentucky 35-24. FIU 6-3. Western Kentucky 5-4. Tulane over Tulsa 38-26. Tulane 6-3. Tulsa 2-7. Oregon State over Arizona State 56-38. Oregon State is a surprising 4-4 on the year, so they're conceivably 2 wins away from bowl eligibility. So how about that for Jonathan Smith and company there? And Arizona's 4-5. Louisiana over Texas State 31-3. Louisiana 6-2. Texas State 2-6. Number 11 Auburn over Ole Miss 20-14. Auburn 7-2. Mississippi State 3-6. Number 17 Cincinnati over East Carolina 46-43. This was a trap game as Cincinnati survived. They're 7-1. ECU 3-6. Tennessee over UAB 30-7. This was an impressive win by Tennessee. I thought UAB had a chance to win that game. Tennessee 4-5. UAB 6-2. Indiana over Northwestern 34-3. Indiana 7-2. Northwestern 1-7. Number 24 Memphis over 15 SMU 54-48. A great win for Memphis. They are now the favorites in my mind to get that near 6th spot of the group of 5 teams. They're 8-1. SMU is also 8-1. South Carolina over Vanderbilt 24-7. South Carolina 4-5. Vandy 2-6. Virginia over North Carolina 38-31. A big win for Virginia. They're 6-3. UNC's 4-5. Number 7 Oregon over USC 56-24. Oregon 8-1. USC 5-4. A good win for Oregon. UCLA over Colorado 31-14. UCLA is another surprise team in the Pac-12. They're 4-5. Colorado 3-6. Disappointing team for sure in Colorado. BYU over Utah State 42-14. An impressive win for BYU, who's 4-4. Utah State's 4-4 as well. Number 21 Boise State over San Jose State 52-42. San Jose State gets the cover. Boise 7-1. San Jose State 4-5. So San Jose State's 2 wins away from a bowl. That'd be another surprise. So many surprises this year with Illinois and San Jose State. Some of these teams that are supposed to be really, really bad potentially making a bowl. That's something. Central Michigan and the MAC already clinched. So there's one. So there's a couple other ones I can't really think of on top of my head right now. Nevada over New Mexico 21-10. Nevada 5-4. They're a win away. New Mexico is 2-7. Fresno over Hawaii 41-38. Fresno 4-4. Hawaii 5-4. So now Hawaii's a win away. Alrighty. Next we're going to talk about the NBA. We're going to just go through the weekend's results without the records because I am short on time. Have to get to my college basketball mega preview. That's releasing one by one tonight with each conference and with the predictions for like the NCAA tournament, NIT, etc., etc. Alrighty, Friday night, Nets over Rockets 123-116. I called it on the podcast the other day. Pacers over the Cavs 102-95. Bucks over the Magic 123-91. Celtics over the Knicks 104-102 on a game winner by Jason Tatum. Bulls over the Pistons 112-106. Lakers over the Mavs 119-110 in overtime. Felt really good about the Lakers. Lakers are off to a good start, by the way. Kings over the Jazz 102-101. Spurs over the Warriors 127-110. Saturday, Thunder over the Pelicans 115-104. Pistons over the Nets 113-109. Nuggets over the Magic 91-87. Bucks over the Raptors 115-105. Suns over the Grizzlies 114-105. Timberwolves over the Wizards 131-109. Hornets over the Warriors 93-87. Warriors were without D'Angelo Russell and Draymond Green, and obviously Stephen Curry's out for 4 to 6 weeks, which really sucks. That was the initial one. My bad. It's 3 months now. So you're not going to be seeing Steph until March, perhaps, with that injury. Talk about the worst team in the NBA potentially right now, Golden State. It's between them, the Knicks, the Kings, although the Kings just won back-to-back games, so they're kind of out of that conversation. So it has to be either them or the Knicks. The Suns have obviously surprised. Charlotte's surprised. So it's, has to be either them or the New York Knicks for the worst team in the NBA right now. I would take Golden State, although they have the 2 better players between those 2 rosters in Draymond Green and D'Angelo Russell that are not significantly injured right now. So I would take New York over Golden State right now. And there's a couple other teams that you could argue. The Bulls have been disappointing. A couple of these other teams. Brooklyn obviously has been a major disappointment to start the year. Houston's not the worst team in the league, but they've obviously been a dud to start the season. We'll get to them in a few minutes. 76ers over the Blazers, 129-128. A good win for Philly on the road without Joel Embiid. And then on Sunday, the Pacers defeat the Bulls 108-95. Important win for Indiana. Heat over the Rockets 129-100. Major win for the Heat. Bad loss for Houston. So back-to-back losses for the Rockets. Kings over the Knicks 113-92. That was a blowout from the get-go. Although this game kind of felt like that game against the Bulls a little bit in that first half and into the third quarter. The difference is that the Bulls kind of quit in that one game and then that the Knicks actually won. And then the Knicks came back. And in this game, the Kings obviously had the best player on the court in this game in De'Aaron Fox. So that certainly helps them. So the Kings might be on the verge of turning their season around. Lakers over the Spurs 103-96. Good win for the Lakers on the road. Mavs over the Clippers, or the Cavaliers, I did that on Friday's podcast, too. I called the Cavs the Clippers. So the Mavs over the Cavs, 131-111. That was a close game that the Mavs blew open late. Clippers over the Jazz, 105-94. Jazz had the lead a majority of that game, and then the Clippers broke out in the fourth quarter. Tonight's game, 7 o'clock, Pistons-Wizards, 7:30, Pelicans-Nets on NBA TV. 8 o'clock, Rockets-Grizzlies, Bucks-Timberwolves. 9 o'clock, Suns hosting the 76ers, 10:30 NBA TV. Trailblazers at the Warriors. All right, now we'll switch over to the NHL. Friday night, Flyers over the Devils 4-3 in a shootout. Islanders over the Lightning 5-2. They've been hot. Capitals over the Sabres 6-1. Good win for Washington. Hurricanes over the Red Wings 7-3. Blues over the Blue Jackets 4-3 in overtime. Stars over the Avs 2-1. Dallas has come on a little bit. Ducks over the Canucks 2-1 in overtime. Nice win for Anaheim. Jets over the Sharks 3-2. A great win for Winnipeg on the road. Saturday, Rangers over the Predators 2-1. That was an excellent win for the Rangers on the road. They're back to 500 on the season. Oilers over the Penguins 2-1 in overtime. Bruins over the Senators 5-2. Islanders over the Sabres 9 straight wins now, but they beat them 1-0. Panthers over the Red Wings 4-0. Maple Leafs over the Flyers 4-3 in a shootout. Good win for Toronto on the road. Devils over the Hurricanes 5-3. A much-needed win for New Jersey in the division. Flames over the Blue Jackets 3-0. Stars over the Habs 4-1. Dallas again with a big win. Blues over the Wild 4-3 in overtime. Actually, the Wild were favored in that game for whatever reason. Coyotes over the Avs 3-0. Jets over the Golden Knights 4-3 in overtime. The Jets were literally a 2-1 underdog in that game and won outright at Vegas. Canucks over the Sharks 5-2 and Kings over the Blackhawks 4-3 in overtime. Yesterday's results, only 2 games. Capitals over the Flames 4-2 and then Blackhawks over the Ducks 3-2 in overtime. Small slate tonight as well, 4 games. 7 o'clock Senators at the Rangers. Penguins at the Bruins. 7:30 Predators, Red Wings. 9 o'clock Coyotes at the Oilers. Next up, I want to talk about the firing of Willie Taggart at Florida State. That was a very surprising move, but at the same time, it wouldn't have been all that surprising had they done that after the season. He was really terrible there, just an underachieving program. They clearly missed Jimbo Fisher, although that program really hasn't been good since Jameis Winston was there, quite frankly, or quite relevant. They've underachieved time and time again. Jimbo leaves for A&M, and then Willie Taggart's fired, not even fully into his second season. And now there's a lot of speculation about who's going to replace him. A candidate is Lane Kiffin, apparently. He said he's interested in that job. That would be an interesting hire, although he's done a great job at FAU this year and has been great there in his tenure. I don't know if he can handle a job like that. He was a failure at USC, so I'm really not sold on him. Urban Meyer would be the Grand Slam win hire, although there's going to be competition USC and potentially Notre Dame if they move on from Brian Kelly. There's the other good group of 5 coaches that could be had, like Mike Norvell of Memphis, who is going to be tied to some of these jobs. Sonny Dykes from SMU has done phenomenal this year, and I think he's raised his stock. But he had some moments at Cal, and then Cal just wanted to move on, and now Dykes has thrived at SMU. Some other names, Joe Moorhead potentially, but I think he might be looking to go into the Big Ten where he had success as an offensive coordinator at Penn State. He won't be the Penn State coach because I don't see James Franklin going anywhere, but I could see him landing a Rutgers, or if Illinois decide to fire Lovie Smith, I could see him taking one of those types of jobs. So there's going to be some interesting candidates for that job, and this is something I'm going to be monitoring on the podcast. Matt Campbell's another interesting name. I think he was the betting favorite for the job in Vegas. And I said that Matt Campbell would be this year's Tom Herman when Tom Herman was at Houston. I've kind of been wrong about that. to some degree because I haven't really heard Matt Campbell's name, and that's because Iowa State's underachieved this year, so you're not hearing his name. But I think you'll be hearing a lot of Sonny Dykes and a lot of Mike Norvell, and you're going to be hearing some other names as well. So it's going to be an interesting situation to monitor. And a managerial hire in baseball, the New York Mets have hired Carlos Beltran as their new manager. Risky, but I think it's worth the risk. It's risky because obviously yet another neophyte at the job. He's somebody that's never had coaching experience before, but he's somebody that absolutely knows baseball inside and out. He's a smarter gentleman than Mickey Callaway. He was the runner-up to the Yankees job when Aaron Boone got it 2 years ago, and the Yankees loved Carlos Beltran so much in the interview process that he gave him a front office job with the Yankees as like a special assistant or something for 2 years, and now the Yankees have to obviously replace him in the front office if they choose to do so, but I think it's a nice hire by the Mets. Obviously, the fans are excited because he used to play for them. But the downside of this, it could be disastrous if it goes bad. Just see down the street in Queens with St. John's and Chris Mullin and how that ended. That was a disaster. You don't want to be that again. But the difference is that Beltran has talent on the roster, and Chris Mullin did not recruit all that well at St. John's, and that's why he lost his job. I mean, that and the combination that he couldn't coach to save his life. I thought he was terrible as the St. John's coach, but I trust Beltran. He'll be an upgrader for Mickey Callaway. Now, what's next for the Mets is to see what they do to improve their roster. They have to make some changes in their bullpen. Edwin Diaz has to have a bounce-back season for them next year if they want to make the playoffs. I think their offense must be better. If Yoenis Cespedes, if they can get something out of him, like a 30-home run season out of him, maybe even like a 25-homer season, I think that is a major win for the Mets, considering he hasn't been healthy in so long and considering the type of talented player he actually is. So there's some questions with the Mets, but they could be potentially turn out in a good way. So we'll see about that as it gets closer to the off season and what other moves that they can potentially make. More baseball news. Aroldis Chapman opted back into his Yankees contract, and the Yankees kind of did a rework of his contract. He's making $16 million a year for 3 more years. And what really is the secret to this is that he took a pay cut. So the Yankees kind of are saving money, and there's all these people yelling at them because they wanted Chapman to opt out so they could save that money to go after a starting pitcher. They're still going to have money because they have the Gardner contract off the books. They have CeCe's money off the books. And they have, I think, some trade potential with prospects and whatnot. And maybe they attach Jacoby Ellsbury's horrific contract to a deal, or maybe they trade away Stanton or Hicks or something like that. So they bring back Chapman. I think that was a smart move, and I know other people aren't happy because of what he did in his past for off-field reasons, obviously with the beating of his wife, which obviously is bad, but has his production been bad since he's done that? No, absolutely not. He had a great year in 2016, helped lead the Cubs to the World Series after being traded from the Yankees. In that trade that sent Gleyber Torres back to New York. And then comes back with the Yankees. Had a bad year in 2017, but that was because Joe Maddon overused him in 2016, that playoff run. 2018, he had a nice year, but he had his best season, arguably, of his career this past year. And he was the American League reliever of the year. So, I think it's a smart move by the Yankees, but if he has a bad year like he did in 2017, then it'll look like a bad deal. And Tyler Flowers had re-signed with the Atlanta Braves 1 year, $4 million, so the first official free agent signing of the offseason. So Flowers back to the Braves. He'll probably be their starting catcher to at least start the season, because I know they have a nice young catching prospect, who's the brother of Wilson Contreras. I think his name was Williams Contreras. And he's somebody that they like. And I wonder if that could be a platoon situation down the road later in the season, just like Flowers and Brian McCann did this year pretty much. So Flowers will probably start the year as their starting catcher. And maybe they bring up this Contreras kid and maybe they can platoon down the stretch like McCann and Flowers did last year. And Flowers is just a good veteran. He's a good defensive catcher. So not a bad first move for the Atlanta Braves, who I think need to make some changes this offseason, have to improve their bullpen, see what's out there in terms of starting pitching help. If you want to go overpay for Garrett Cole or Steven Strasburg, that would certainly put them in the conversation as the team to beat in the National League. So they're an interesting team to keep an eye out come offseason. Okay, guess the lines. Week number 11 in college football. There's some weeknight games this week. There's a lot of action on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Sunbelt action as well, and then some interesting games Friday night. And then you have the Saturday slate that has two marquee games with two unbeatens going at it. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm sorry, 2 games featuring 2 unbeatens. So without further ado, here we go. Tuesday night, Kent State at Toledo. Toledo's, I have, giving 4.5. They're giving 7.5. Ball State at Western Michigan. I have Western by 6. It's Western by 7. Wednesday, Miami of Ohio at Ohio. I have Ohio by 8.5. It's Ohio by 7. Louisiana at Coastal Carolina. I have Louisiana by 10.5. It's 13.5. Temple at South Florida. I have Temple by 3. It's Temple by 2. UCF at Tulsa. I have UCF by 10.5. It's 17. Washington at Oregon State. I have Washington by 10. I have 5 and it's 10. Maryland at Ohio State. I have Ohio State by 38. It's 42. Penn State at Minnesota. I have Penn State by 6. It's 6.5. Vandy at Florida. I have Florida by 17.5. It's 25. Baylor at TCU. I have Baylor by 6. It's only Baylor by 1. East Carolina at SMU. I have SMU by 27.5, and it's 23.5. UMass at Army. I have Army by 18. Listen to this, guys. 34.5. 3-6 Army should not be giving over 30 points to anybody right now. They've been terrible this season. Yikes. Western Kentucky at Arkansas. I have Arkansas by 7.5. It is 2.5. Texas Tech at West Virginia. I have Tech by 5.5, and it's 1.5. So a lot of people believing in the Mountaineers, it looks like. Purdue at Northwestern. I have Northwestern by 3. It's Purdue by 1.5. Florida State at Boston College. I have BC by 1.5. It's 2. Georgia Tech at Virginia. I have Virginia by 16.5. It's 17. They gave them the full 17. UTSA at Old Dominion. I have Dominion by 3. It's by 4.5. Air Force in New Mexico. I have Air Force by 19.5. It's 21.5, so 2 points off. Charlotte at UTEP. I have Charlotte by 9.5. It's 12. Stanford at Colorado. I have Stanford by 1. It's 3.5. South Alabama at Texas State. I have Texas State by 6.5. It's 7.5. 1 point off. LSU at Alabama. Game of the year. Bama by 7. It's Bama by 6.5. It opened at 7. UConn at Cincinnati. Cincinnati by 34.5. And it's 35. Half point off. Kansas State at Texas. I have Texas by 2.5. It's 5.5. Wake at Virginia Tech. I have Wake by 3, and that's what the line is. So the first correct pick of the podcast. Georgia Southern at Troy. I have Southern by 2. It's 2.5. Louisville at Miami. I have Miami by 4.5. It's 5. Next up is USC at Arizona State. I have State by 2. It's State by 1. UAB at Southern Miss. I have Southern Miss by 2.5. It's 6. That's very high. Illinois at Michigan State. I have Michigan State by 14.5. It's 13. Iowa at Wisconsin. I have Wisconsin by 8.5. And that's what the line is. So the second correct guess of the podcast. New Mexico State at Ole Miss. I have Miss by 20.5. It's 28. North Texas at La Tech. I have La Tech by 3.5. And it's 6. Georgia State at UL Monroe. I have Monroe by 2.5. It's Georgia State by 2. I think the wrong team's favored there. FIU at FAU, and I have FAU by 15.5. It's 10. Missouri at Georgia, I have Georgia by 17.5. It's 14.5. Washington State at Cal, I have Washington State by 4. It's 7.5. Utah State at Fresno, I have Utah State by 3.5. It's Fresno by 4. App State at South Carolina, I have South Carolina by 1.5. It's 4. Clemson at NC State, I have Clemson by 26.5. It's 30.5. 4 points off. Notre Dame at Duke, I have Dame by 7. It's Dame by 6.5. Tennessee at Kentucky, I have Kentucky by 12. It's 2.5, so that's very small. Liberty at BYU, I have BYU by 6.5. It's 17. Iowa State at Oklahoma, I have Oklahoma by 16. It's 13. Wyoming at Boise, I have Boise by 11.5. It's 13, so a 1.5 off. Nevada at San Diego State, I have San Diego State by 10.5. It's 17. That's big. And San Jose State at Hawaii, I have Hawaii by 7, and that's what the line is. So the third correct guess of the podcast. So 3 correct picks, and 2 times that occurred where I guess the opposite team was favored. Best bet of the day brought to you by FanDuel. We have some interesting games tonight on the sports slate. By the way, tomorrow we'll be starting to bet college basketball money lines on the podcast in terms of throwing them in for best bets. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm probably going to just do that a lot throughout the season with money lines I just would feel very confident in. I'm going to go with the Cowboys tonight against the Giants on the money line. NBA, I'm going to go with the Bucks at the Timberwolves. I don't feel good about it, though. And in Portland at Golden State. It's going to be fun picking against Golden State this year, because those are like automatics, especially against teams that I think have way more superior talent, as do the Blazers do. The New York Rangers against the Senators. I am going to take the Preds at the Red Wings, and that's it. So 5 teams. I'm going to do 80 cents here, plus 383 parlay, payout of $3.86. That's it for the podcast today. I'll be back tomorrow recapping Monday Night Football, NBA, NHL, guess the lines for Week 10 of the NFL, and then we'll get into the college basketball slate for tomorrow as well. I hope you guys have a great day, everybody.